Hey guys, welcome back to Creep Softly Studios. Today we're joining in with HalloweenPaloozah put on by Indiana Jones. Check out that playlist in the description box below and let's get started. Today's video is a Grandin Road dupe. I found this Halloween paper book wreath on their website for $130, and while looking for inspiration I found the exact same one by Gwen Moss years ago, so I feel like they kind of used her idea. So go check out her blogspot and her Instagram. For this wreath, you're going to need some jute twine. They have several different varieties at the Dollar Tree. You're going to need an 18-inch wire wreath ring, also at the Dollar Tree. They have different sizes if you want a smaller one. And grab yourself a bottle of this instant coffee from the Dollar Tree. You're going to use this to age the papers and give them a nice patina. So you can buy books at the Dollar Tree as well, but usually you can get them from thrift stores and stuff, maybe even cheaper than a Dollar Tree. And I'm going for one that is, let me measure. Okay, this book is about 6 1/4 pages, would be 6 inches wide. So that is how wide. The width of the book is what you're really looking for. So if I put these on this frame, overlapping a little bit so you can't see the frame, and then they hang out, so you're going to get probably about 3 inches hanging off. So if you want a skinnier book, say maybe 5 inches wide, that's still going to give you that extra 2 inches, and it'll be 20 inches wide, which is kind of a standard wreath, but it's up to you however what size you want. I actually picked this one up at the Goodwill bins for 50 cents, and it looks like a really old book, but it's actually from 1996. So, alright guys, so I'm going to cut the cover off. So if you're doing this, you want to cut your cover off on the inside and remove the cover from the pages before you start to take the pages apart. It will just make your whole process so much easier. And usually most books are made the same way. If you cut right down right here, you can cut it without cutting your spine and just remove the front, and then you flip it over and cut there, and then you can remove the back. So it's a pretty simple process. Now, as you can see, this book has been in some kind of water damage, and the edges of the pages are already kind of, hopefully you can see that, they're already kind of distressed and aged looking. Yeah, so this book was already, you can really see it on that page, this book was already kind of knackered when I got it, so I don't have a problem kind of tearing it up. So that's kind of cool that that aging is already there. It'll just kind of add to the ambiance. So the first thing I have to do is cut down these pages, or you can tear them. It's up to you what you want your pages to look like. You could just tear the pages off like that, or you can go down and cut them. I'm going to tear them. I have to have you need a lot of pages for this project, so it'll just make it easier, I think. And I kind of like that torn edge, and it looks pretty darn cool. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be working with. I'm just going to keep going through, and I'm going to tear the rest out. Okay, so what I figured out is actually the best way to do this is to get a pinch of the coffee and sprinkle it on the page, like so. And then take your water and wet it down. You don't want to use too much, you don't want a sticky page, but and then let it set and dry, and it'll be nice and aged. Okay, so here is my stack of papers. Mine is just a handful that I've already stamped, but this is kind of what they look like. You can get, you know, all kinds of different aged looks to them, splatters and stuff with that instant coffee. So lots of great pages ready to go. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm taking some Halloween stamps that I've had for a long time and just stamping a few things on where they will be rolled at. So if you roll them up and tie them, then anything that you stamp on this end will show, and you can, you know, add a few words here and there. Because I did notice in the details of the Grandin rolled one, there are some words. You can't really make out the words, but there's different printed words on the pages. So I thought it would be cool to take the stamps and kind of go in and add a few details that way. So like some of them are very subtle, just say Happy Halloween. Some are larger, the 31st. And then a few I'm going to stamp this like on the full sheet, so that'll be a big stamp on there. So yeah, that looks cool. Sweet. Okay, so now that I have my various pieces that I want stamped, I can go ahead and roll up the ones that aren't stamped, because these will be the base. I mean, all of them got to be rolled. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can roll one piece into two halves, making it look like one. You can roll one just regular, like so. Or you can kind of roll them off center and get a little bit of this edge hanging out, and that looks kind of cool, just for a little extra texture. So lots of ways you can do that. Or you can roll a bunch of them, like a couple of them, and put them, you know, in the same wrap. You kind of get something that looks like this. I kind of prefer this way because it gives a little more stability for gluing, so you don't have any like going all wonky. But that could be cool too, because then you could put a couple in the same tie and have one down and have one up. So that's up to you. So however you want to tie those, pretty simple. You just roll it and tie it. And then I cut up some pieces, say maybe between 12 and 15 inches long, just some pre-cut, a couple at a time, and just unroll and cut more as I need it. And also when I go to wrap, I wrap this twice and then tie it. I just like the look of the thicker area there, so I just go ahead and tie that on a square knot. I kind of like that these hang down, and if you wanted to, you could even fray them out a little bit. I mean, you know, kind of give it a little bit more of a creepy look, so that's up to you. Okay, so I rolled this one kind of like, it's just a single one rolled twice, but one end I pulled out this way and one end this way, and I think that looks kind of cool too for a variation. So very kind of scroll like, so I'll show you how to do that. So you want your tea-dyed side to be showing, so you're going to flip it over. I'm going to roll this pretty tightly. And this is just so it's easier to work with and get this all started, because the tea dye paper, it makes it, the tea dye or the coffee dye makes it stiff, and so it's difficult to roll without creasing it. So that's why I go ahead and roll it tightly. Then I flip it over and roll this side kind of at an angle and start rolling it in. And then I can kind of push this side at an angle and start rolling it in. And then I kind of just release a little pressure, because I don't want them to be super tightly rolled. I want them to be, you know, have some fluff to them. That way I don't have to use, you know, a million sheets. And also wrapping it double actually helps it to not slip. If you just do one wrap, it can kind of be loose and slip around on you, and this kind of like tightens in on itself, so that's why I do it that way. So I think that looks pretty cool, and I'll make up a variation of those. So I want lots of different variations. Okay guys, so I've rolled all of these, and it probably took me an hour, hour and a half, something like that, but I've got all different kinds. I've got single ones and double ones and ones that are kind of rolled like this. And then I have all my printed ones over here. You can see they have the stamping, trick or treat, spooky, all those, so I can turn them. And then I picked two of my favorite ones out of there, and I'm just going to set those on the shelf. I'm going to hang on to those, and those make some pretty cute little decorations just on their own. So, you know, if you didn't want to make a whole wreath, you could make something like this, so that's kind of fun too. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start gluing these to my wreath frame, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I have gone through and I have separated the double folds from the single folds and all of the ones that have printing on them, just so I can get a good idea of how many I've got. And I'm starting with this Dollar Tree wreath, and the way that they have this is curved right here, and so that has two bottom pieces and a top piece with a curve. And I don't want to be trying to place my flat pieces on here, so I'm turning it upside down, and I am working with the two back portions here, and that's what I'm going to be gluing my pieces to. So I'm going to be going at them like this. So another cool thing about doing it that way is that you have this bar sitting out so that you can hang it really easily. Whenever you get ready to hang it, your little hook for your wreath will just slide right in there, or you can hang it on a nail and it's not going to interfere with any of your decorations on there. So that's kind of a cool way to use that. Okay, so I'm just going to start gluing these on. Okay, so now it's a very much more filled in. It's a little more where I wanted it to be. So yeah, I really love how that looks and how that turned out. I love that there's some little, I'll turn this the right direction, because I do have a top and bottom here. I kind of situated the lettering so that it could be read in the different ways. So I love that all of those little Halloween words are kind of poking out here and there. So yeah, very cool. Alright, so now on to the bird. Okay, so when I did the coffee dyeing on here, as you can see, it's pretty light, and there are some places that are darker, you know, here and there, but overall it's not quite as dark as I would like it to be. It's not quite as dark as the one in Grandin Road. So when you're doing your dyeing, I recommend that you do the edges of each page darker. Mix up some thick stuff and paint the edges while you're doing the first round of dyeing. Or you can go back in, and I have just made up some pretty strong coffee here, and I'm just going to go through and kind of go at each of the edges and kind of try to darken this up a little bit. Okay, so I wanted to show you the difference between this side. Now some of this is still wet, so it will dry just a tiny bit lighter than what it looks right now. But I'll show you the difference between that side and this side. I think this has a lot more depth and it looks a lot neater. And I have been going over and kind of lightly brushing kind of sporadically across some of the pages just to give them a little bit more color because they were all kind of one note looking. So I think this is looking really good and much more like I had envisioned. Also, I'm taking a little bit in my brush, knocking off the excess and slinging some little drips and drops over the top of all of them. And I think that'll give it a little bit more dimension and pattern as well. Okay, I'm liking the way this looks so much better. It looks so much more old and creepy. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that a lot better. So if the smell of coffee bothers you, this will have kind of a faint coffee smell. If it bothers you, you can always add a little bit of vanilla or cinnamon to the coffee, and that can help soften that strong coffee smell. But over time it will lose that smell anyway, because these are such, you know, they're hollow and they're light and airy. They will lose their smell pretty quickly. So just that little note for you guys to keep in mind. Okay guys, so obviously you can use a crow that you can purchase in these, and if you have one from Halloween's past, then that's great. I did have one, but I can't find it anywhere. So I'm trying to create one rather than having to buy one online, which is like $7 or $8 for one stinking crow. Or, you know, anyways, so I went to Dollar Tree looking for things that I could use to create a crow, and look what I found. So, slightly crow-ish shape there. And, yeah, so I was looking for images online, and I found one where it has a crow sitting on the thing, and it's kind of turned its head to look that way. So that's the orientation that I'm going to be doing, something kind of like this. And then if you add a little piece of your extra book pages, then you kind of start to get a little closer to that shape. So this would be the tail, and then this would be the body, and then you got the legs coming out. And after it's all painted black and everything's covered, do a little paper mache on this little thing. So I think that's what I'm going to do, and hopefully it's going to turn out. I think once it's painted black, everything's going to kind of come together. And yeah, so that's what we're going to work on. I've got a bunch of these book pages left over from the book, and so I'll just be using those. And we're going to paper mache a little crow here. So I've got my rough bird shape here, and I think I can put some wire up into the styrofoam thing for its feet. I have mixed up some flour, water, and lots of salt to dip my paper in to do some paper mache, and that's going to work out pretty well. Just some classic paper mache, and we will cover this form. So now I just got to I'll tear these into thin strips. Okay, so I have already started this and I forgot to hit record, but you basically just dip your paper and wipe off the excess, then wrap it around. And this paper mache is very watery. It's kind of like thick soup. And the reason for that is I want the water to kind of break down the paper so that it is nice and pliable, because if it's too dry you're going to get a lot of rough edges. So this is what I do. I dip it and then I squeegee it off, and then I wrap. So when you're wrapping, you want to go with the contours. You don't want to just like force it to go in straight lines. You're going to end up with a lot of hard edges that don't meet up. So you're just going to allow it to go in the contours, the direction that it wants to go along the edges of the bird. And you're going to just kind of smooth it down. And when it's wet like this, you can go in and smooth down those edges. As that paper gets really saturated, it's easy to kind of push it around and make it smooth like you want to. Now when this dries, there are going to be some hard edges. That's just the nature of paper mache, but you want to diminish those as much as possible, like areas like that where it's kind of sticking up. That's not necessarily going to stick down, so what I'm going to do is get another piece, maybe a half a piece, saturate it, then I'm going to go in and cover that little piece there so that it has a chance to push itself down. And as that soaks in, it will become more and more pliable, and you can get a much finer, nicer finish on that. So that's actually going to be on the back side, so I'm not super worried about it, but I am trying to make sure that all the areas are smooth and all of the areas of tape are covered, so that when I go to paint this, it's going to hold its paint really well. So I think that's looking pretty cool so far, and I think I'm going to let that dry, and then we'll move on to painting and adding legs. Okay, so I set this out in the sun and let it dry completely. It's nice and hard and ready for it to paint. Okay, so I'm just taking some baling wire. You can get it at the hardware store. It's called a tie wire. It's like a rebar tie wire. You can use any kind of wire you want. I like this because it's got it's nice, thick, heavy wire, and I think that's gonna look cool. So that will be his feet, and then that can wrap around the stick. So there is my crow. So this is just a stick I found in my yard, and I am just going to attach his little feet here. Okay, so I've got my bird all glued in, and I think I'm just going to add some different things. I've got these little spiders from Dollar Tree. I'm going to glue some of those on. Here is my finished wreath. I have it hanging on the outside of the door just so that you can see all the details with the natural light, but I do recommend this be an indoor wreath for a wall or inside of a door in your home. If this paper gets wet, it's going to disintegrate, so do not use this outside. I love this wreath because it has a lot of room for personalization. If you leave it at the Grandin Road example with just the book pages and the bird, then it will be $7.50 as opposed to the Grandin Road, which is $150. If you add all of these extra things like I did, it's a $15 price tag. So thanks so much for watching. Hit that like button and that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Please be sure to visit the other links in the HalloweenPaloozah series, and I will leave that playlist in the description box below. We'll see you guys next time, and keep it creepy.